Hello again. We're going to be looking at dimension styles today and how to customize our dimensioning environment a little bit more. Before we go there, I'm going to show you one of the really nice features on the fillet command. So I'm going to go up and select the fillet command, and I'm going to right mouse click immediately and choose fillet multiple. And what this allows me to do is pick multiple corners to either trim up or put fillets in, things like that. So I'm going to choose multiple. Now this particular fillet command has absolutely no radius, so it's going to create a square corner on our object. But you can see I don't have to keep going back to the fillet command to clean up each of the corners, and we're finished. So what I've got here is a kind of a hot tub type size object. It's about 5 feet each direction. It's got a little waterfall and it's got a return basin at the bottom. And we're going to talk about how to do different styles of dimensioning setups. Initially, you could do dimension styles right here from the home area under annotation. We can get to the dimension style. Okay, so that's one way to get there. A lot of people go under annotate, and when you're under annotation, you have to deal with text, because that's under annotation, dimensions, leaders, tables, revision clouds and markup type features, and then annotation scaling also. The dimension is where we're going to focus today, and if you hit the little arrow just to the southeast of the dimension the dimension locale, you're going to go to the dimension style. The same thing will happen for text. If you choose the little arrow, you go to text style, and under leaders you'll go to leader style manager and so forth. So you can go either direction by launching the dimension style manager. So before we get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about the dimension style environment. And with dimension styles is I can set up as many dimension styles as I need, and I can apply a dimension style to a dimension, meaning as a dimension gets created based on a specific style, I can go back in and edit it, or in some cases override that particular dimension. So if I put in all my dimensions as standard based dimensions, but yet then I want to override a couple, let's say for example I want to change the number of decimal places, I can go in and override the number of decimal places, or make them both English and metric, or change them to architectural, or change their arrowhead designs. There's all these different capabilities within dimension styles, but I can override specific dimensions that I select. I could also create multiple dimension styles and keep them as part of a drawing template. This is one of the items that does get stored with the drawing template command. So just like your title blocks, we could also store custom dimension styles. So when you create a new drawing, you'll have all your title block information and your dimension information in one spot. You'll notice that there's two different basic dimension styles already created, annotative and standard. Well, what's the difference is always the first question I get asked. An annotative allows you to keep a standard height dimension text no matter what the layout scale is. So if we specify that our dimension text is going to be 0.1875 inches, no matter what the scale is on the layout, that dimension text is always going to be 0.1875 inches tall. So it's not dependent upon the scale, which is a benefit because as you work with multiple scales or have detailed drawings, it's nice to not have to recreate dimensions. Because theoretically, back in the early days of AutoCAD, you literally had to create a layer for each scale of the dimension and then redimension it or copy the dimensions, so you would have multiple iterations of the same dimension. Well, the annotation option now provides that no matter what the scale is, the height that's originally specified is that in that dimension style is the height of the dimension or the features of the dimension that will be put within that annotation. All right, you'll notice that we have set current, new, modify, override, and compare. I can compare two styles and see what the differences are. So let's choose compare. And I'm going to compare standard with annotative. And right now there's only one difference. My overall dimension scale is different. It's 1 in standard and 0 in annotative, meaning that annotative will automatically update it based on the output. So you can compare multiple styles that you create. If I choose to create a new style, I can choose new, and copy of standard is the default. It's going to copy the current standard one, and we'll put this as custom dim. Now, one of the nice things is that I can start with the standard or annotative either way. I can make it annotative, but I can make the standard annotative just by clicking annotative. But I could also choose what it's going to apply to. So if I want to make this particular dimension style only apply to linear dimensions or radius dimensions or diameter dimensions, I can do that. So now I've got a custom radius and a custom diameter dimension. So what I'm going to apply to is this one's going to be set up for all dimensions, and we'll continue. Now, when you get into the dimension style editor, you'll notice that the custom dimension name is now up at the top. We also start with the first tab, which is the lines tab, which deals with dimension lines and extension lines of the object. First, the dimension lines. Dimension lines are the ones with the arrowheads. We can change their color. Again, color related to pen size early on. Now color is color. Line types. Is there a custom line type that you're using? Or line weights. How dark does this dimension have to be? How thick does the line weight need to be? Does the dimension line extend beyond the tick marks? So for example, if we choose an arrowhead style, and we're going to change this here in a minute to architectural slashes, we'll want the dimension line to extend beyond the tick or the architectural tick. Baseline spacing. If we stack two dimensions on top of each other as a baseline dimension, how much distance needs to be between the two? And lastly, do we want to suppress either one side of the arrowhead or the other? The same thing holds true for extension lines, and those are the lines that basically extend from features. The big thing with extension lines is they extend beyond the dimension line, meaning what is the tail beyond the arrowhead, and what is the offset distance or the gap distance between the entity and the end or the beginning of the extension line. Those are the two big feature items. One of the other new features is, do we want a fixed length extension line, meaning do you want it exactly the same size each time? That's an option. Symbols and arrows, we can change to a variety of different symbols and arrows. And if I change to architectural ticks, you'll notice that we have, on the horizontal ones, little tick marks that go beyond the location. Center marks. We're going to talk more about center marks here later in this discussion, but center marks are a key way to make your drawing look good. Arc lengths. When we put in an arc preceding the dimension in text, an arc length symbol, meaning it'll be a arc to provide you an arc length. Jogs are if we do a leader or a break in a dimension, and those are the jogs. Text. What is the text style? It's standard. Whatever the text style is based on standard is what's going to show up. Text height. Now, one of the things I'm going to caution you on is changing custom values. It's really easy to get in here and start saying, oh, I need my arrowheads to be a certain size, because that's what I needed was a specific size arrowhead. And oh, I better change my text height. Well, I found that that causes more problems than helps and solve problems. There is a way to scale every feature. It's called the dimension scale option. That way you don't have to worry about individual scaling. Like for example, the text height is going to be about 3/16 of an inch. And what your fraction height is full size, meaning if you want small size fractions or big size fractions. You also have justification and the locations of how the text is set up. And again, aligned with dimension line is metric orientation, and horizontal is an English or US based orientation. The fit is where a lot of the action happens. The overall scale factor is the first thing I'm going to talk about. This is where all the features are edited, meaning text height, arrowheads, distance away from the object for extension lines. That's all updated right here at Dimension Style. And so we can set a dimension style to make our drawing dimensions look appropriate. But what if you wanted a specific height? If you want specific height text or specific height dimensions, then I suggest using the annotation feature, so that way it is not dependent upon individual scale or your ability to do mathematics to calculate what the scale factor needs to be. On the on the left-hand side, this is how things get set. You'll notice that in this case, the fit option, the text, the first thing to be moved outside is going to be the text instead of the arrowheads. Or in this case, the arrowheads are the first thing that gets moved outside. Always keep text between extension lines. It's a good feature. That way your text is always set. What if the extension lines are too small? It's still going to try to do it. So sometimes both text and arrows gives the computer the ability to adjust, having some dimensions fit and others not. A throwback to old school is placing text manually and dimension lines between the two extension lines. So again, it'll automatically draw, like for example in architectural, if you're using the tick marks, then that's a good feature to have, is to have the line between the two tick marks. In mechanical drafting, that's not typically used. Okay, it's not a negative thing, it's just that it's not typically used. Primary units. Now on the primary unit side, we have our basic unit setup again, very similar to the units command that you started. So I could put architectural, and it's going to be in feet and inches, and now I can set my overall precision. So I can set it for 2 decimal places or 3 decimal places when I'm working with mechanical drawings, and it'll set all the dimensions that I create based on that value. Fraction format, you can change horizontal to diagonal. So instead of having a horizontal slash, you have a diagonal slash. Again, a little more old school versus current practice. Round off. Round off's kind of a really unique feature. The way I envision round off is not the way that you think round off works. This is one of those features that back in the mid-1980s, the programmer came running into the room and said, "Hey, look what I can do, look what I can do." And it had no relevance whatsoever to drafting, but it was more about what the computer software could do more so than the drafting. So here's how rounding works. Let's say, for example, I round to 0.25 or a 1/4 inch. All my dimensions, so I've got 1 3/16, 13/16. All right. So 1 3/16 is going to turn into 1 1/4. It's automatically going to round it to the next 1/4 inch. So it's not like rounding the number of decimal places. That's the precision tool. This is rounding to a common value. Again, in engineering drawing and an architectural drawing, you don't want to use this. This produces more inaccuracies unless you want really every dimension is going to be based on a 1/4 inch. Then it doesn't matter what the real value is, it's whatever the rounded value shows up as. And that's not really good. That's not good. That's not a good practice to get into in terms of guesstimating and using that as the rounding tool. But I'll click in the prefix area and you'll notice that that's not 1 1/4. There we go, 3/4, 2 1. So it automatically rounded it to that 1/4 inch value. I'll go ahead and choose 0. Just like English class, prefix and suffix means exactly that. If I want to put a prefix in front of every single dimension, it'll show up. So Tom gets put in front of every single dimension as a prefix. Suffix, again, you could put a suffix value in. And this is a really important feature right here. This will save you and your company a lot of time. This measurement scale feature. Let's say you get a drawing that needs to go overseas, and it's already dimensioned. Now, it might not be the proper dimension technique, but if there's a deadline approaching and you need to make these millimeters, I know that they're architectural. I'm going to go set them back to decimals so that way it's easier to see. So let's say, for example, I need to make these millimeters. Well, I can type in a scale factor of 25.4, and I now have all my dimensions in millimeters. I can control my precision. Okay. I change my decimal separator from a period to a comma, and now I've got metric-based dimensions, except for the arrowheads, which are required here. But look beyond that for a second, because that's on another tab. But look at how fast I just changed it from English to metric. And I can do the same thing from metric to English. So I get a drawing in from Germany. It's metric. I need to convert it to an English-based installation drawing. I can use measurement scale. This command alone will save you and your company money. Zero suppression. Okay, right now you notice that I've got R08 or 0.80. If I suppress the leading 0, R0 goes away. If I suppress the trailing 0, 0.80 goes away. Wow. So theoretically, when I'm using math, I don't want to suppress trailing zeros. I can suppress a leading 0. That particular value is not significant in the dimension arena. It is significant for calculations, however. But that's what leading and trailing zeros represent. Angular dimensions, I can customize those to see what the precision looks like. I can make them into degrees, minutes, seconds. It's gradients or radians, that kind of thing. Alternative units. Many manufacturers now require you to have both English and metric dimensions on a drawing. And so, for example, Honda Auto Manufacturing requires both English and metric dimensions, meaning the metric is the primary dimension and the English is the secondary, but in your part design drawings, you need both. So to have both, I can have English dimensions. If I turn on alternative dimensions, you'll notice I'll have English and then metric. If I use that measurement scale and readjust the scale here, I can have metric and then English, so 1.02 and 25.08. So let's say, for example, I need to change this to metric is the primary unit and English is the secondary unit. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 0.039371, which is the scaling factor. That's 1 over 25.4. That's what that value is. I'm going to go back to primary units and type in the scaling factor of 25.4. And you'll now notice that I now have metric as my primary unit and English is now in parentheses. So just by using measurement scale and alternate units, I can easily make a very professional, well-functioning drawing with dimensions. Let's go ahead and set these back to 1 and turn off alternate units. And again, alternate units, you can set up all the other zero suppression, placement of how it's going to look, and so forth. The last thing I have that I can customize is my tolerances. And tolerances is the level of acceptability. So right now, listening to this particular video for 20 minutes, your tolerance level is now somewhere between a 7 and a 6. It started at 10, but your tolerance level keeps going down and down and down as I continue to speak on. So you're about a 7 or a 6 right now on the tolerance level before you just turn off the video. So in this case, when I set a tolerance, I can set it as a symmetrical tolerance, which means that the plus and the minus values are exactly the same. So my particular object can be larger or it can be smaller based on a set value and still be acceptable. And why this is important is that if we tried to manufacture to an exact position, then the bottom line is we would have to pay for all the scrap. Although the design will probably work, the issue becomes if it's untested, we can't sell it, that kind of thing. So tolerances, symmetrical or plus minus for both. Deviation is plus, or upper value is positive, lower value is negative. Limit, this gives you the upper and lower values, so I don't have to do the mathematics. This is great for doing if you're doing a quality control drawing. It's a great way for a quality control drawing. And then basic, which puts boxes around the values, which means don't use them for calculation purposes. They're for informational purposes only. So in this case, I'm going to use deviation tolerances, and I'm going to set a 2 decimal place precision. You cannot have the precision higher than the precision on the dimension. So if you need a 3 decimal place tolerance, then you better have 3 decimal place dimensions, or else it's not going to work properly, because the tolerance cannot be higher than the original dimension. So I'm going to set my upper limit to 0.05 and my lower limit to 0.02. So you can see that I'm plus 0.05 minus 0.02, and my tolerance is in the middle, and I can align it, and I can zero suppress the tolerance, so I can get rid of the leading zeros. That'll help eliminate some of the bulk on there also. So if I change this to limit, if I change it to limit, you'll notice that it gives me it does the math for me, 0.07 and 1.0 automatically. That's the nice feature about using the limit tool, is that I can quickly get limit dimensions on my drawing when I'm checking to see if it's within the specification. So dimension styles. Now you've seen the basic rundown, let's go ahead and set one up here. So we're going to be doing a basic architectural dimension. So we're going to start with architectural tick marks. Our precision or primary units are going to be architecture. I'm going to turn my tolerances off because I really don't need tolerances right now with an architectural drawing for what we're working with. 2 decimal places are fine in the tolerance. 1/4 inch is okay. I'm happy with the 1/4 inch setting. And I've got the tick marks. That's all set up. The one thing I don't have set up is my total scale. And so if I set a scale factor Okay, let's say for example I want to print at 1/4 inch equals a foot. So how many times does a 1/4 inch go into a foot? Whenever I ask that question, the first answer that I hear is 4. And that's wrong. A 1/4 inch goes into a foot 48 times. So I could set my scale 48 times the original size. And so if I were to plot this drawing at a 1/4 inch equals a foot, it would automatically be at the correct height for plotting. This is where the annotative comes into play. If I choose annotative, then no matter what scale I print at, the dimension will always be correct. That's quite powerful. So we're going to set it to 48, and we're going to choose OK. And under Custom Dim, I'll choose Close, and I'll throw a dimension on. Right mouse click, throw a dimension on, and I got 5 foot and 5 foot. Those are pretty big. So maybe a 1/4 inch isn't the right size. 1/4 inch equals a foot. So I hit the little arrow. We're going to hit Modify. Go back to Fit. So a 1/2 inch equals a foot would be half of that, or 24. And so if I choose OK and Close, you'll notice that the dimensions that I created automatically update, and I can add more dimensions. Now when I'm placing dimensions next to each other, you'll notice that I have my object snap turned on, and that I'm snapping to an existing point next to my 1 foot 10 inch. This will guarantee that those two dimensions are lined up and they look good. That's the value of using those object snaps, is that you'll get really good alignment. I could also choose different styles of dimensions, as you've seen, and I'm going to go ahead and do a radius dimension here on this arc. And so based on the design, that radius dimension is going to have to reside inside the drawing. And I'm going to need to put my diameter dimension also inside the drawing. So overall, I was able to customize my dimensions a little bit. Okay. What if I wanted to change these all to a different dimension style? I can do that. So I can grip these, and we know that we can change layers by the use of grips, but can we change dimension styles? So if I grip it and choose standard, oh no. By the way, this is what you'll typically get on your first architectural drawing, is this. And what the problem is that you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that you didn't set up the dimension style. Right? If you remember, what we did is we set up all the custom dimension styles. We didn't set up the standard dimension style. So the standard dimension style is for a small mechanical drawing. So to set up the mechanical drafting, we're going to go ahead and choose Fit. We're going to set up 12 as our scale. Primary units, precision is going to be 2 decimal places. We'll choose OK, and we'll choose Close. So you saw how I was able to quickly change the dimension style by picking the object, right mouse clicking, and changing to a different dimension style. So having these dimension styles preset inside your template when you're in a corporate setting allows you to be much more efficient. And the higher level the efficiency, the more valuable you are to the organization. So now at this point I can grip dimensions, move them out if I need to, because unlike Unlike the architectural style, I have much more flexibility with the mechanical. I can do similar things with the architectural. So let's go and let's change this one back to architecture. So I grip it, right mouse click, dimension style, back to custom dim, makes it architectural, and I can grab and move the text where I so choose. So again, take your time, work with it, and have fun with dimension styles. Be careful on setting up a lot of dimensions inside your drawing. You can have a few inside your drawing. You can edit it and work on it the way you want. But the key on dimension styles is set it up and use it. That's what they're designed for. In a future video, we're going to talk a little bit more. Oh, actually, we still have time. Let's go ahead and show you one of the other cool features before we go. So under dimension styles, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new dimension style called center mark. And I'm going to use it based on the standard setting. So it's going to be called center mark. It's going to start with the standard setting. The only setting I need to turn on is to change the mark to a line. And we'll choose OK. And we'll choose OK. Now there's a command called center mark. And if I do the center mark command, it allows me to put a really good looking set of center lines located on my drawing. And these are truly center lines. So if I grip and drag this line straight up, oh, it didn't turn it into a center line. What happened? I didn't create a center line layer. This line should be on the center line layer if I'm going to do this. Because remember, we have to deal with size and position. And so it would probably enhance us to have a size and position. But to make this work properly, remember what I did. I went into dimension styles. I set up a center line dimension style just to do this. It's a good one to have in your stable. I can then go back to the home, create a layer, call the layer. Oh, look at this. Def points. Whenever we create a dimension, we have what are known as definition points, which are hidden, non-plotting points at the end of each of the extension lines. One thing to do is make sure you don't put anything else on that def points layer because it will not plot. I actually have a story about a student who put their whole drawing on the def points layer, and it was the final exam. Didn't turn out well. So, like we've shown you in other videos, we're changing the line type. I'm going to go ahead and load the line type. Change the color so it shows up easily. And I'll grip both of these lines. Change it to the center layer. Okay. So that still didn't look very good there, right? Well, there's also a scale for line types, and that's called LT scale. So line type scaling is like dimension scale, but for line types I can control the scale of that line type. Because I can go in and change line weights and line types, but there's nothing in here for line scaling. And under annotate, there's nothing here for line scaling. So the only way to really set this up is to type LT scale. One word, type the whole word. If I hit the enter key, it's going to ask me what the scale factor is. And if you remember, I typed a 12 in for my dimensions. Well, the line type scale is usually half that value. In this case, instead of 12, it'll be 6. And you'll notice that it produces the appropriate level of breakdown of scale. So that's dimension style. And like I was mentioning in an earlier note before I went into dimension centering, we're going to be talking more about annotative scaling in an upcoming video on creating multiple viewports. And so we'll talk about how to create an annotative scale there. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.